All right, all right. It is just connecting now. All right, all right. All right, so let's do this thing. Thank you, Melissa, for joining.
You're welcome. Thanks. Good to be here.
Well, and a big thanks for providing a topic. I love that. I will never say no to a topic you suggest. I mean, it'd have to be really weird.
I could get weird.
I know, I like that. Let's do it. Let's see how it pumps the ratings. Um, but the topic today is feeling stretched thin. And you said something I can't remember your words exactly, but I got the impression that you were saying that you're feeling like you've got a super full schedule right now and that your priorities are being tested, and that's leaving you feeling stretched thin.
Yes.
And I guess for me, just kind of thinking about this definition of stretched thin, just to level set, make sure like we are kind of on the same page, is it's like when your time and your energy and your resources don't seem to be lining up with everything else that's on your plate, right? And so that leaves that feeling of just not having enough of you to go around. Is
Yeah,
that kind of
totally.
where you're coming from?
Yes.
And you also said something else about like how like looking good and feeling good, but I think we should pause that for another episode because I feel like that's a kind of a separate conversation that we could build on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's kind of jump into this feeling stretched thin kind of topic because I always like to look thin, right? So in a sense, that's good. But tell me kind of what prompted you to have that on top of mind.
Well, we always hear the phrase, the sandwich generation, right?
Mm.
And I'm definitely feeling that right now. I'm in my 40s. I've got two girls who are growing up and are probably in one of their most busiest seasons. At 9 and 13, we've got all the sports going on, all the activities, the school, the homework. Um, you know, my husband and I both have full-blown careers. We have hobbies outside of that and interests and volunteer. And on top of all that, now we have aging parents. And um, you know, we're not so young ourselves these days, but we're not too old either. Um, I would say over the past year or so, I've really started to feel the heat a bit more, in terms of, feeling stretched thin, feeling pulled in all the different directions, pulled in the direction of the kids and all the kids' activities and helping them out with schoolwork, feeling the pull with work and making sure that I'm, the best employee that I can be at work. Um, and then, where we need to, checking in with our parents and helping them, kind of navigate some health issues and things like that that have kind of cropped up recently. And just, worrying about them and worrying about, who's going to take care of them 5 or 10 years from now. Um, and so it's really just the feeling of being pulled in a lot of different directions and trying to figure out, where to go next.
Well, so a couple things there that I think are so well, I have a question. So when you feel pulled and like stretched thin, how does that show up for you? Like, where's that awareness showing up? I'm curious. Is it in your body somewhere? Do you feel tense? Like tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say I feel it. I feel it in my body. I think, in some ways will take its toll on mental health, will take its toll on physical health. Um, it can sometimes manifest in different ways, but um, I think I already have a little bit of a tendency to be sort of an anxious person, so feeling stretched thin, yeah, does not help that at all. And I know we're going to get into this a little bit later, but it really becomes an exercise of prioritization and just trying to figure out and realize that not everything is an emergency and not everything needs to be done, today or tomorrow. And that sort of anxious person in me thinks and acts like everything is an emergency and everything needs to be done right away. And that's how I've been running for the last, 20 years. So I've had to, really sort of hit the pause button on that and sort of reframe how time is managed and how, the different things that I need to be focusing on get prioritized.
Well, and why is this important to you? You know what I mean? Like, why is it important that you've used the words running a couple times? Like, I'm getting the impression that that's not where you feel like you want to be. Like, but I don't know. Tell me a little bit about why this hits.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say it's not where I want to be. I think it's that I want to be everywhere and I can't necessarily be everywhere.
Okay. Okay. So the running just kind of is what it is. It's the speed you need to go at currently to make everything happen.
Or the perceived speed,
Okay.
you know?
All right. So yeah, so it's like this noticing that I'm maybe nearing capacity
Yes.
and not wanting to go over and and still not wanting to like just let balls drop.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. No,
That's
I
right.
totally get that. Um and being also I think I am a, also an anxious person and I think I always have been. I've talked about that. And for me, like it always shows up in my sleep. That's where I notice it. Because I'll just like wake up at 3:30 with a racing mind. So like I know that's my awareness piece. Um, and when that's happening, something has to change. So anyway, it's interesting. Do you have a place where it shows up and you're like, oh God.
Oh, well, sleep too for me. So, um, that's been happening a lot with me lately, but of course, it could be for one of a million reasons, right? It could be that. It could also be that, I'm going through, perimenopause and, there's some of those changes going on too. So I'm getting hit from all sides.
No, oh, for sure. For sure. And the symptoms all overlap. So it's really, I think, impossible to say, oh, it's this. And if I just do this one thing, I'm going to get better. Um, but for me, that's also really empowering to stop looking for the silver bullet and look at like the big picture and make tweaks and know that all of those working together are probably going to do better than just one thing anyway. So
Yeah, totally.
I'm with you there. Um, so for you mentioned time. Time feels like something that's stretched thin. And what's what goes by the wayside for you? That when you're stretched thin, do you know what I'm saying? Like, what's the consequence of this? Because even though you want to be everywhere, there's got to be some sort of something's not quite feeling right, or this wouldn't be a concern. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I think for me, the first thing that goes is my physical health. Um, Exercise, eating well, taking my daily walks, those tend to go out the window. That is the thing that goes to the bottom of the list, which unfortunately it shouldn't, right? I mean, as somebody who's a health practitioner, you're going to be the one to tell me no, you're doing it all wrong. Like if you start prioritizing your health, maybe you won't be experiencing, some of these other, symptoms or anxieties, and you'll just, feel better, and as a result, you'll manage some of these other things better, right? Um, but that's just the way that my mind has been working these days. Is I'm like, well, I'm walking, I'm talking, I'm alive. So I don't need to focus on my physical health. I need to focus on all these other things that need to get done. Um, yeah.
Well, first of all, I'm not going to fuss at you. You know what I'm saying? I mean, because what's the point in that? And I'll say it definitely comes from a place of like there is a place of privilege in recognizing that we can choose ourselves, right? And truly not everyone can. So let's just acknowledge that we're lucky that we can even kind of have this conversation. Um, oh shoot, Mel, I think I might have frozen up.
Oh no, there you are.
Okay, good. Um, I got the notice that my thing was unstable. But
I am very unstable.
so just to like just kind of share a little bit too about me. So I don't feel particularly stretched thin in the way that you're talking about, like um from a time and running perspective. Oh no, I lost you again, I think.
Oh, you don't see me? Do you see me?
Yeah, I gotcha.
Okay.
I lost you for just a second. I think we're back.
Yeah, it looks like we're in.
Yeah. You know, I'm gonna record us just in case so we don't lose all our good content. Um, So where I was saying is that where I feel stretched thin is along the resource not of time or not of time or energy necessarily, but for me, I feel more around the resource of money, which is just a little bit of a different take on this, that you have two full-time jobs, but I only have one, you know? And so for me, I am able to, I think, a little more easily prioritize my health and my workouts and things like that because my day is not um, 6 a.m. to midnight like yours. I have kind of a break in the middle of the day when my kids are at school now. And so I consider that a huge blessing. Anyway, I've just noticed that. Um, and I've kind of come to terms with it that that's okay for me to say. You know, I've made those choices. And as a result, what I have less of is money. So, you know, that's something that, especially last year, I was really working on, just kind of unpacking a lot of stuff that I have that I hold around money and all of that. Um, and what I've kind of come to realize is that I want to contribute money. Um, because I don't necessarily feel like I deserve, and that's such a bad word, that I deserve an expensive haircut or a whatever, a new something if I'm not bringing money into the table. And
Thing.
that's what I bring. That's not what John is saying or anything else. That's really my own stuff that I bring from childhood, frankly. So anyway, isn't that interesting? Like I've kind of been able to identify that I don't have to earn it in order to deserve it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's taken me, like I said, time just to kind of understand where I was feeling so sticky around money. Um, and then to unpack that whole thing and to feel good with it. Now, that's different than, and you'll appreciate this, but I think it goes without saying, like budgeting is a reality, right? Like we do not have endless funds, period. So sometimes it wouldn't be the right thing to buy the thing, or you know what I mean? So that doesn't mean that that I am just charging everything on the Black Amex. Um, but that I don't have to feel badly for wanting something, that I can deserve it without earning it. So that's actually been a really powerful kind of move for me in understanding like my psyche around this time in my life where money wise, I'm not bringing a lot to the table. So
So
I don't know.
that's interesting. So when you say, that you're feeling stretched thin financially, is that primarily what comes to mind? Is that, you're concerned that you're not bringing money to the table? Is that you're equating that with feeling stretched thin, or did you mean something else?
No, that's where when I think about this concept of being stretched thin, that's where I feel like I am the most stretched thin. Um, I think again, just because I don't have two full-time jobs, um, I feel like I have a little more space to just, like I just have more space
Yeah.
in my day. I have more white space. Now, I'm working on filling that in productive ways, not just like time killing ways, as my life's changing also. Um, but yeah, it's just interesting.
Okay. All right. That is a very different spin on my version of stretched thin, but very interesting.
Well, but it's because I think I'm also like, I've been where you are. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like this is kind of not that you're going to do what I've done, but I'm ahead of you. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Um, Now, that doesn't mean you should quit your job and, whatever. I'm not saying that, but just life evolves, I guess
Yeah.
is my point.
Yes.
And what we did is took just our life and priorities, and this is where we've landed. I'm not saying that's where you'll land too, but I think just having the confidence to look at priorities,
Hmm.
check in, and say, are we where we want to be? And the answer can be yes. The answer can be 100% yes. We're going to do everything exactly the same as we're doing now. But then it's intentional, and you don't have this feeling of being stretched. You're more like empowered to say, I'm in this season and I'm doing everything. So it's less passive of somebody stretching you and more active, like I'm I'm stretching myself and I know it and I'm doing it. Does that make sense? Like that
Yeah.
distinction?
Yep. That's helpful.
Um, but yeah, so I was kind of thinking about this way to prioritize. And I have a couple of things that came to mind that I've learned over the years. Do you want me to kind of share what those are?
Yeah.
And then I'd love to hear your thoughts too on this. I just put a couple like notes down on in terms of reprioritizing, perhaps, and knowing that choosing not to change is a choice, and there's nothing wrong with that. Um, And it's kind of this idea that if everything's important, nothing is important, you know? And and just getting really clear in terms of like writing down your answer. What are my top three priorities? And writing them down, sharing them, and then just really being loud about them. And then knowing that if something comes up and it's not in one of those priorities, you're choosing to support your priorities as opposed to choosing to like not take something on. Does that make sense? It's the switch again, right? So there's that little relearning in our heads that we're not disappointing someone. What we're doing is supporting ourselves. So if you choose that health is your priority, when you say no to XYZ thing, it's not because you don't care about them, it's because you're choosing your priority. So anyway, does that make sense?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Um, and then this is one that I've just like recently learned, or not recently learned, but these words is that before you add anything, you subtract something else. So approaching it kind of like a math equation. So literally before saying yes to anything, what are you going to say no to free up space? Because I feel like as women, we're taught to like optimize our time and be strategic with our time. But I think sometimes we just need to take shit off the to-do list and not like feel like we have to optimize anything but our own well-being. And so always subtracting before we add, like that equation, I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is. I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, what do I take away? How am I going to do that? I can't take anything away.
Oh, right?
You
Exactly,
know,
because that's the
that's the
unlearning you're doing.
that's such a common mentality though. I think you're right about amongst women is like that we do have to take on all the things, right?
Mhm.
Whether it's all the things from a career perspective, because if we don't, we're not going to climb the corporate ladder, all the things with the kids, because if we don't, then they're not going to get into a good college, and so on and so forth, right? Like we tell ourselves these stories um, to convince us that we have to do all these things.
But who does that benefit? Right?
Right.
I think about that. Who does it benefit? And listen, I'm not ditching on anyone in particular, but if we take on all the things for our husband, for example, who does that benefit? Him, not us. We just feel frazzled, you know? Um, if we take on all the things at work, who does that benefit? Maybe us, but maybe our superior, our boss, or whoever, you know? If we're a
Mhm.
business owner and we take on all the things, then we're definitely just burning ourselves out. Um, so yeah, I feel like that's kind of a story that women have been told that actually keeps us in our place more than empowers us, you know? And I don't love that. I've been noticing that a lot lately, that this sort of mindset that we have to take it all on is not moving us forward. And it's kind of keeping us stuck in maybe the traditional gender roles,
Mhm.
but also giving us the opportunity to be like career women. Well, doing both is really hard. So I don't know. Does that make sense?
No, it is. I mean, in my head, I'm already, spinning and going 1,000 miles an hour. Like, yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, it's all a bunch of bullshit. I mean, why do women have this insane expectation to be mothers and career people and um, house managers and all the things, right? Um, But that's another topic for another day.
Well, and I think it is, but we're also perpetuating our own suffering, I believe, in some ways, right? And listen, I'm not blaming the victim because it's definitely been thrust on us in some ways, but how are we perpetuating that cycle of, you know?
Yep. No, I get it.
So, anyhow, subtract before you add. I think that's a good kind of like, I don't know, filter to maybe run things through.
Yeah, I like
Um,
that.
and then the other thing that I've also really been trying to do, and I learned this from my coach, is we like cannot possibly go full throttle all day long every single day, right? Like we will burn out. And I think everyone kind of agrees with that. So then it's like, well, how do we figure out how the time goes? And so I guess there's some research that says we work energetically the best for 4 hours a day. But those 4 hours are really bio-individual, so they're different for everyone.
Hmm.
So, if you can, it's a really cool exercise to look at your day, your waking hours, but and budget and sleeping hours, but to say, where am I like, where do I feel the best naturally? Like, assuming I get a good night's sleep and I wake up, when's my peak time? Identify those 4 hours and then really try to schedule your most significant brain tasks, right? The things that are really going to take your most focus, your most like processing power and try to schedule those during those 4 hours and then leave those other tasks that are still need to be done, but don't take quite as much work, you know, and scatter those in other places throughout your day. And I think that's really interesting because I'm really good in the morning. Like first thing when I wake up, I love having my cup of coffee, doing my things all before the house is quiet. And then people just wake up. So that time gets interrupted a little bit. But then I am really best before like 1 p.m. And I realize that's when I like to record. That's when I like to do like my best thinking work is sort of that early morning hour and then 3 hours late morning, early afternoon. And then other stuff that just has to get done, I can fit in the afternoons, even when, when kids are done or whatever. And then late night is really hard for me. My body just naturally, I'm not very good after 8 o'clock. Like I make mistakes. I was paying bills, I paid the wrong bills. I like paid my cleaner wrong, blah, blah, blah. And so
I should have
thinking
sent you
about
like
where
a
my 4 hours is has been really helpful.
I should have sent you like a Venmo request at like 9 o'clock
Oh,
last night.
you would have gotten
I
a
would have been,
grand, baby.
yeah.
I would
This
have
is
paid
why
you
we make
all the
a
dollars.
good pair though, because I am like the complete opposite. I am like, you know, one eye open until noon and then I'm ready to go until midnight. So,
Yeah.
um, put those together, we're a powerhouse.
We're ChatGPT,
Yeah,
basically. You can get
basically.
work out of us. But
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that interesting to think about? Like where are your 4 hours and how can you maximize that 4 hours and then go give yourself a little grace, and obviously there are days when that doesn't work out. But, just like finding that pattern, I think for your own energy is really like a cool thing to know about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. That I like that. That's cool.
Um, so when you think about all this, what do you think? Is there an action item? Is there something you want to try to do or shift?
I knew you were going to ask me, like,
I
what do I
know. Or
feel
you
about
just
this now?
and like I said, I was just going to judge you a little bit, or are you just going to stay the same? But just reminding us that's a choice, and that's
Yeah.
100%
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. There are certainly things that I could say no to that I know in my brain I'm probably not going to do it, you know?
Mhm.
Um, like this morning, I had coffee with the CEO of a nonprofit that I'm on the board for. And we were talking about just some things that I could that they'd like me to do going forward. And there's always that question of time, right? Do I have the time to do it? But I'm really passionate about this particular organization. So, in my head, I'm like, I'm just going to make the time. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to make the time, right? And so that's where there's a little bit of that prioritization going on is like, well, I'm not going to say yes to, these other couple of things that are sort of out there. Um, whether it's volunteer opportunities for some other organization or helping out at the kids' school, those are the things that I'll probably say no to so that I can prioritize the work that I want to do for this nonprofit as an example. So I think I know how to say no to additional things, right? I think for me that's not necessarily the issue. I think for me it's I probably have a little too much on my plate as it is.
Mhm.
So, is there something that I just don't need to be doing or need to be as focused on or maybe need to give as much energy to? And that's where I need to do the work.
Well, for sure. And that's where doing like a week time audit can be super helpful, is just looking at where you're actually spending your time, just what's your day look like? And then looking at that and saying, well, does that line up with my top three priorities? And if it doesn't, then again, the ball's in your court, right? But then you can start to choose. And I think it feels much more like taking things off because they're not what you stand for, because what you believe in or where you want to go, like that's kind of an easier yes, you know,
Hmm.
than talking yourself uh, into just keeping things on for the sake of doing it. And maybe also asking your question, like, who does this benefit?
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
You know, I mean, I don't know, but yeah, that time audit to me is so interesting. Because like when I did it, I realized I kind of like the way I'm spending my time conceptually, but I want to be much more efficient with like my work hours. And so it's easy for me to say, oh, I'll just do this laundry and watch an episode of the morning show. You know what I mean? But that's just because I'm distracting myself from the hard work of biz dev, which I don't want to do. So instead, laundry has to happen on Friday. Just I don't allow myself to have that distraction of laundry and not hold myself accountable to the harder work. So you see what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
it's not that, listen, I got to get that done. Um, but being a little more disciplined with myself about when it happens and holding myself accountable to getting done what my priority is. So anyway,
So what does it mean for you to sort of reevaluate, you're feeling stretched thin financially. So, what's your path forward on that?
well, since I'm entering this new phase where I'm going to have fewer people at home, um, I'm ready to start making more money. And that means that kind of getting out of the comfort zone I've built for the last 10 years, you know? And being more in like, like just saying that more, like saying I'm ready to start making more money and being more open to opportunities. Um, Trying to set myself up there, knowing that there's going to be some compromise that comes out of that too. Because I am comfortable in a lot of ways, but I'm also not feeling as fulfilled, you know, especially now that just the priorities of the people around me are also shifting because they're just older and more self-sufficient. Um, so I don't know, does that help? That's like where I feel like being more intentional with my work time has bubbled up as a place where I can move the needle on that.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I have a goal to make $1 million in the next 5 years. And I think it's going to all happen on year five because right now it's not looking real good. But you know, it's going to take time to plant those seeds to be able to make that money. Um, but just like financially, that's made me realize that I don't want to just fill my time with like work. I want to build to something that would be substantial. Um, or then it's kind of not worth it. Or I'll just fold clothes and walk my dog. You know, I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing. Does that make sense though?
Yeah. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Because I really want to contribute to something big. If it's going to be financially, yeah, because it is more stressful for all of us. Um, when I am stretched more thin, and I've experienced that too over the last decade, just is what it is. So, and I value that. And I know the people around me do too.
So have you thought about, so right now we're in sort of different, you and I are sort of in different seasons, right? I have sort of the traditional, 9 to 5 job. I've got kids that are a little bit younger. You have more of, I would call you a serial entrepreneur, who has been trying to find, sort of like the right fit and the right opportunity. And that's also allowed you to have more of you available for your girls who are a little bit older than mine. So, you've got one that's off to college, you have one that's going to college, and then, you've got one that's not that far behind. And so, I know that that's what you meant earlier when you said you're a little bit ahead of where I am, but I mean, have you thought about what it means to go from today, where you're saying, like, today I'm feeling sort of financially stretched thin, or I want to be more of a financial contributor, to if you if you make certain decisions, well, then that put you in the place where I am, where you're feeling more like physically and mentally stretched thin because you are now in a, you know, you're in a money making role, and it's requiring more of your time, and like, how do you sort of reconcile that?
It's definitely on my mind. In a sense that like 10 years ago when I was in your role, working full time and had the younger kids, I did hit a bit of a breaking point. My whole family did, which caused the whole recalibration in the first place, right? So, for example, the thought of me just today getting a full-time job, even that paid really well, I wouldn't do it. Um, and it's maybe a little bit of, I think it's somewhere between a fear response and knowing the experience, is that I just don't want to dump myself back into the deep end like that because I don't feel like the outcome would be different. Um, Especially over the next 4 years when I still have Lauren home. Now, 4 years from now, when I'm not, when I don't have anyone home, I think I'd have to reevaluate. But who knows? Somebody could be home. There could be another one. They could come back like a boomerang. Um, I, I do think though that the entrepreneurial piece of things is where I want to look, just because I do know that that would give me a little more control. Now, it could mean I have a super busy season, and that season could be a couple years when I'm building, and when that happens, something's got to give, and I would probably have to go back to getting a little more help around the house and things like that, which is an investment. Um, So yeah, does that make sense? I feel like I'm really trying to use my past experience and let that inform kind of my next steps.
Hmm.
Um, but I also know that I don't want to keep on doing the same because I am, like I said, I'm not feeling super fulfilled as I see my my sphere here at the house kind of get smaller and smaller. And I don't want to be depressed or anxious or resentful, because everybody else has fled the nest and I'm still here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, you have past experience with, the traditional 9 to 5, and you're not willing to be stretched thin in that sort of a role, but it sounds like if you were doing something that you were very passionate about, that involves sort of growing a business in some way, that would make um that would make it better for you in terms of like accepting that that is taking, more of your time that you hadn't been spending on, sort of like a career or a business over the last couple of years. So it sounds like that's the priority. It's not that you don't ever, you know, want to be stretched thin in that way, or that you can't be stretched thin in that way, but it's just about how you're going to go about doing it,
A
and
hundred
how you're going
percent.
to spend your energy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it takes a lot of recalibration all the time, which I do think having like like young kids, I think can really be draining in that sense that they just like they take a lot out of a person. They took a lot out of me when they're really young. Um, and as they get older, I do feel like even though their needs change and they have their own stuff, for me, that has freed up some of that space to like say, okay, let's check in. How are things now? Whereas I feel like there was just like a probably 10, 12 years of just feeling like I was treading water. Um, and I don't know how to get out of that. Because I think even if you have tons of help, that's just a season of a lot of it's physical and emotional kind of work happening, you know?
Hmm.
Um, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I get it. I work for a really good company now, and I have a lot of, flexibility, but I remember being in a 9 to 5 role before I got into consulting, and it was nothing, it couldn't have been further from that. It was not a 9 to 5 role. It was more like, 6 to 6, and you better be here on the weekend. So I think too that sort of depends on what company you work for and what type of job you do. And there's so many variations to that. I think for me, I can handle the amount of time that is needed for the job that I'm in now because I know that I can still do it and have time for other things. So
Mhm.
that's the trade-off there. But I definitely could not have continued doing what I was doing like, 6 years ago.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know. It's like that whole thing that sometimes when you're just in the weeds, you can't even see, like because you can get feeling so stuck.
Hmm.
Um, but I do believe even with finances and everything, like I do believe when you want to make a change, I think it's possible. I really do. And again, not maybe not for everyone, and I understand that. And I think sometimes just like some of the crazy creative stuff that we just don't let ourselves like go there. We don't let ourselves dream, I feel like sometimes because we just don't want to be disappointed or whatever. But if women can do anything, we can get shit done. So if what we want to get done is less stress, I think we could figure that out. It's just a matter of accepting it,
Hmm. Yeah,
you know?
love that.
So, friend, on that note, thanks for chatting as usual.
Yeah, always a good time.
Yes, for sure. Um, let's do a fashion one soon. I just bought this new blouse and I want to figure out how to wear it as a shirt. So maybe I'll come with my whole
Okay. Well, I was gonna say I love your
scarf to
sweater
blouse
today.
idea.
You're killing it, your sweater game is killing it. Like your blue
Oh, thank
khaki and see.
you.
That's very cute too. I like it.
Thank you. Um,
Oh, so cute.
it's a twin set.
Love the
And you've got
necklace.
the aloe, your aloe butter
I
yellow
do.
that we talked about our first.
I did wear the butter yellow today. It's super cute. I have the whole set and I'm like very excited to wear my shorts. Unfortunately, they did not have pants. So
I was gonna say, do you have your space heater on your legs?
I I'm not like it's literally right here.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't care because it's super cute. I'll freeze. I don't care.
Oh my gosh. All right, my
Um,
friend. Well, you take good care. Thank you for talking about this.
yeah,
And
very interesting topic.
I love it. We come up with another one. Your topics are the best.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, have a
Oh,
good day.
you too.
All right, bye.
Bye.